Hola everyone, buenos días a todos. Yo soy David. Uh, I'm David. Hello everyone. You might recognize me and my colleague David from the past couple sessions that we've hosted. This is our weekly Spanish Q&A session. Estamos aquí a responder a sus preguntas y discutir un tópico de español para ustedes. We're here to answer questions and discuss the topic for you all every week. I'm here broadcasting from Tennessee in the United States, and I'm just so excited to be back. This was always so much fun, I know, both for David and myself. So we're just ready to get started. But first, David, ¿cómo estás? ¿Cómo está la situación en Colombia? How's the situation over there in Colombia? ¿Qué cosas no puedes hacer? What things can you not do? Are there limitations to daily life still?
Hola a todos. As you said, I'm David as well. I'm broadcasting from Colombia, and I'm very happy to be here as well. Estoy muy feliz de estar aquí con todos ustedes. Es un día muy bonito, pero para responder a tu pregunta, puedo decirte que no podemos salir. La situación es muy difícil. No tenemos tiempo para estar en el parque, pero pasamos también mucho tiempo con la familia y creo que eso es importante. As I was saying, there are some restrictions here. The situation is a bit complicated in Colombia, as it is also in the United States, en Brasil también, en Latinoamérica en general. And therefore, we cannot go out, we cannot go to parks, no podemos ir al parque, etc. But we spend also a lot of time with families, with parents, and hopefully we all stay healthy. That's the most important thing. And here we are back with our topics for today. So David, last time we learned a bit more about direct and indirect object pronouns and how they differ from reflexive pronouns. So maybe we can start with the sentence that we had last time to close the session, so that we see if our viewers, Spanish learners, could find the right answer. So I will post it here, and we will ask everyone if they got it right. So the sentence read, tengo que comprar un regalo para mi padre. I have to buy a present for my father. ¿Por qué no compras una computadora? That could be a suggestion. So as a quick review, we saw what direct object is and indirect object is, and how we can replace them by using the corresponding pronoun. So sometimes we have the big question, what should I use? Lo, la, le, los, las, les, or even the same ones that we saw for the reflexive pronouns, the ones that are the same, me, te, nos, os. So what would be the right answer here?
And as you type your answers, remember how we distinguished direct objects from indirect objects. So direct objects are what is being affected by the verb or by the action. In this case, it's the verb comprar, to buy. So there's something that is affected by that verb, the direct object, and then you have the indirect object, which is, in this case, the recipient of the direct object. So keep that in mind. I see a lot of right answers. This is so good. Very happy to see these answers coming in. Debbie, do you think it's time to display the right answer on the screen?
Yeah, I think so. Go ahead.
Okay, let's choose an answer from Lee. Lee said, oh, I clicked on Trisha's answer, but that'll do as well because she's also right. Trisha says ley, and that is the right answer. So if we put the word ley in the blank, we get ¿por qué tú no le compras una computadora? And that's saying, why don't you buy him a computer? Or you could also kind of translate it as, why don't you buy a computer for him? So like I was explaining, the indirect object is the recipient of the direct object, which is the computer. That's the thing that's directly affected by the verb, comprar, to buy. So the computer is bought, but it's bought for whom, or in this case, you could kind of translate it as to whom. And the answer is para mi padre. So mi padre becomes the direct object pronoun le, as we talked about last week, and as David was just explaining. So great job to everyone who got this right.
I'm also very happy to see these great answers. Exactly. So I think we see here many good answers, and this is a very, very difficult topic, as we said last time. But it seems that you got it right and you understood it. And I think we are ready for today's topic, David. Aren't we?
I think so too. I'm ready to get started if you are.
Yeah. So if you remember the first question that David asked me today, it was like, what things can you do in Colombia under the current circumstances? And I was talking about all the things that we can't do because of the restrictions. So today we are going to talk about negation in Spanish. So negation in Spanish can be very easy. Sometimes it gets a bit more complicated if we count the double negation, the triple negation, but we will go through this each one by one. So why don't we start with the easy way to negate things, sentences. That's why we brought this sentence to you that we are going to display here on screen. Which is, oh, not this one. It is very dynamic. Hablamos italiano, pero no hablamos francés. We speak Italian, but we don't speak French. So as we can see here, we have a very simple sentence, hablamos italiano. That's a statement that we can say. But if we want to say we don't speak French, we could say nosotros no hablamos francés. So it's enough to put that little word no in front of the verb hablamos. And this way we are negating a sentence, no hablamos francés. So it's very easy, but maybe we can go to the second example that we can show to you today, which is, this is a good one. This is something that I did today in the morning. Esta mañana desayuné muy temprano. This morning I ate breakfast very early. But David, did you have breakfast today?
Pero yo no desayuné. So we take the verb desayunar, we conjugate it in the past tense, in this case, the preterite tense, something we haven't talked a lot about in our lessons, but just know for now, until we talk about it later, that it's one of the past tenses. So we say, yo no desayuné to convey I did not eat. So it's pretty simple in this case. Whereas in the affirmative, yo desayuné, that means I ate breakfast. All you got to do is just add the verb. I'm sorry, not the verb, the little word no, the negation word no in front of the verb. So it actually becomes pretty straightforward in simple cases like these.
Yeah, exactly. As we can see here, there is no need to use any auxiliary verb in Spanish. It is enough to put the adverb no. This is the negation word that is the most used in Spanish. But what if we have a look at the third example sentence where we use no also with a past tense form? ¿Has visto mi libro? Have you seen my book? No, no lo he visto. I haven't seen it. And here we have also negation. We have also a direct object pronoun. We have a past tense that is the present perfect in Spanish, has visto mi libro. And here we start our answer with no, which is the same in English. No lo he visto, I haven't seen it. So as you can see, it's very simple. No is also very functional. It corresponds to no in English. it has its own form. There is no need to add any other verb. And this way we kind of have our negated sentence in Spanish.
One thing that you might notice is the position of the word no. So if you remember from our discussion last week about direct objects, you'll recognize the word lo, and that refers to the book, mi libro, because it's a masculine singular noun. So when we turn it into a direct object, we say lo, and lo comes before the verb. In this case, it's a verb that is in the present perfect tense, something we haven't talked about, but it's another way of expressing that something has happened in the past. So I have seen, I have eaten. In this case, I have seen or I have not seen the book. So we say I have not seen it. The lo comes before the verb, but the no comes before all of the rest of it too. So the order would be the no, the negation word, and then the object pronouns, and then the verb. So remember that the word no, when you're negating a sentence, comes before the entire verb phrase, which includes all of the object pronouns as well.
Mm-hmm.
But that means that when you are dealing with a subject, so if you wanted to include the optional subject, we've talked about how subjects can be optional in many cases in Spanish, the word no would come after the subject. So you could say, no, yo no lo he visto, or you could say, yo no quiero ir al parque, I don't want to go to the park. So it's important to remember that the subject always comes first before the verb in a statement that's declarative, that's saying something, not asking a question. And then you have the word no if it's negation, and then you have the entire verb and all of its objects after that.
That's right. So we just saw that we have this first word no, but this is not the only negation word that we have in Spanish. So we'll skip to the next part, which is a bit more complicated, but don't worry, we'll cover this up. But let's start with the first word that is very, very useful when we are learning Spanish. So maybe you might have already seen this word, nada, which means nothing. So for instance, we can have situations where we say, nada me molesta. Yeah, nothing annoys me, nothing disturbs me. Nada me molesta. So in this case, we have nada, a word like nothing. That's the subject of the sentence. Just keep that in mind. But sometimes we can say, for example, we can use the word nadie. So it's also very, very similar to nada. It sounds very similar. But in this case, we have nadie, which means nobody, no one. Nadie nos visitó el fin de semana. And in this case, we have also a negation word that it's being a subject in the sentence. Nadie nos visitó el fin de semana. No one visited us at the weekend. So as we can see here, nada is a word that we use to refer to things, nothing. And in this case, nadie is a word that we use to refer to people, yeah, nobody, no one. Just keep that in mind. And then we have also some other negation words that we use to refer to time. For example, when we say nunca, nunca, which means never. Esa película nunca la he visto. Yeah. David, can you say something about nunca?
Nunca is a word that I use all the time, and it functions pretty much like it would in English. But when you try to translate a sentence like nunca la he visto back to English, it sounds a little bit funky. It would be something like never have I seen it, never I have seen it. But when it comes before, so when it's the first word or one of the first words in the sentence, you don't have to have the word no there. We'll see some examples down the line in a little bit where you'll have both a word like nunca or nada or nadie with the word no. But when it's at the beginning of the sentence, in a case like this, it's important to remember it's not the subject of the sentence, because when you're saying nunca la he visto, I've never seen it, or never have I seen it, the subject is I. And it's implied, it's optional here. You don't actually say yo. You could say yo nunca la he visto, But just remember that this word will come a lot at the beginning of a sentence, and it captures the negation without having to use the word no itself.
Yeah, exactly. So, but before we get into this, so we just saw 3 words: nada, nadie, and nunca. And there is a 4th one that we would like to introduce, which is tampoco. This is the negated form of también. You might have already seen that before. Tampoco means neither. No tienes tiempo. Yeah, don't you have time? Well, yeah, me neither. Which is basically a negation word in Spanish. So we just saw 4 different words to negate things, people, time as well, and in this case to express the meaning of neither. But what if we have a look at these words in different sentences? So let's start with nadie. Do you remember the meaning of nadie? Nadie está en casa. ¿Dónde están todos? Nobody is at home. Where is everyone? It's very, very simple. In all of these examples, we'll see these negation words in the beginning, the beginning of the sentence. And this is very important. Let's have a look at this second sentence where we have 2 negation words that we just introduced. So I will display this sentence on the screen. Give me a second. So los Martínez nunca ven televisión. Nosotros tampoco la vemos. Nunca and tampoco are present in this sentence. The Martinezes never watch TV, and we don't watch it either. As we can see here in English, we just saw that tampoco means neither in this context, in the sentence, and we don't watch it either. We don't have the word neither, but we have the word either, which is where we see as well that we don't watch it either. So this sentence construction is also very similar in Spanish as well, and that's where we see that we need double negation. So in this case, we have simple negation words that are placed in front of the verb or before the verb, which is very, very important to keep in mind, because now we will have a look at sentences with double negation. So just keep an eye on this. Nunca here in front of the verb. Let's have a look at this sentence. No conozco a nadie en mi nueva empresa. So some weeks ago, we learned a bit more about the difference between conocer and saber. And in this case, we have a sentence where conozco means to know. And no conozco a nadie en mi nueva empresa basically means I don't know anybody in my new company. Or literally, I know nobody in my new company. So in this case, we have nadie, which is a negation word, which means no one, nobody. But here we see that we need a no in front of the verb. No conozco a nadie en mi nueva empresa. So I think it's clear. Anything you would like to add, David?
I think so. So as a native English speaker, this is something that I struggle with a lot. The idea that you can have more than one negative or negation word in a sentence in Spanish, sometimes even more than 2. So in English, we say something like, I don't know anybody, or I know nobody. And we wouldn't consider it grammatically correct to say something like, I don't know nobody, or I don't know no one. But that's essentially what you are saying in Spanish when you have 2 negative words. You have the word no, which kind of negates or cancels the verb in this case. So no conozco means I don't know, or I'm not familiar with. And nadie means nobody. So if you were to literally translate it, you would be saying, I don't know nobody in my new company. That sounds really weird to an English speaker like me, but that's because English only allows you to have one negative word in the entire sentence. So then we have these weird words like anybody or anything, I don't know anything, or I don't read that book ever, Whereas in Spanish, you would say something like, I don't read that book, never. And that's completely grammatically correct. So we see it pretty clearly in this example here. Two negation words in the same sentence, totally fine. And Spanish speakers use those constructions all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And here we have a nadie, which is the negated direct object. And in this case, we need to place this direct object after the verb. And this is key to understand whether we need double negation or just a simple negation. No conozco a nadie en mi nueva empresa. If we remember the first sentence where we saw how to use nadie, nadie está en casa, I think that was the sentence, or nadie nos visitó. Here we have nadie as the subject of the sentence. So we need to have this nadie here in front of the verb. Yeah, and that's important. So basically, when we are saying I don't see anyone or I don't visit anyone, we just need to understand that we are starting our negated sentence with no. No veo a nadie. No conozco a nadie. No visito a nadie. Just because nadie is placed after the verb. So we need a support there with a second no, which is placed in front of the verb. But let's have a look at another example with a different negation word. So we had, before we had the sentence, Los Martínez nunca ven la televisión. And here, what happens if we place that never after the verb? If we put it after the verb, then we will need a second negation word, which will be in front of the verb ven. Los Martínez no ven nunca televisión. And the same happens as well when we are talking about tampoco. Nosotros no la vemos tampoco. So the key, the thing that we should remember when using double negation is whether we are using a negation word like nadie, nunca, nada, or tampoco, and we are using it after the verb. So in this case, we need a second note that is helping the verb to understand, this is a completed negated sentence. So it's very important to keep this in mind. And we know that this might be a bit complicated when we are speaking Spanish. There might be also cases where we see a triple negation, sentences with three negation words, but don't worry, they are not frequent at all. They are just little exceptions. These double negations are very used because we, as Spanish native speaker, we tend to put this never, either nothing, no one, very often after the verb, and that's where we need that first no. So I think this is all what we brought to you for today. Negation is a topic that might be easy sometimes. Sometimes it gets a bit harder, but I think we are ready for your questions. If you don't have anything else to say, David.
I think that's all I have to say, other than the fact that this can be sort of a troublesome topic if you stay in your kind of English language mindset, and if you're looking for a word like anything, anybody, because you've created an expression in Spanish that's like, I don't know. So no conozco, as in the example before we're talking about, and you say no conozco a, and you want to find a word for anybody. That word doesn't really exist in Spanish. So you have to kind of, this goes back to the very first episode that we did where I was talking about reframing the way you think of language, but this is just a really clear example of that. The idea that Spanish doesn't have a word necessarily for anybody, anything, either, ever. It's just that you have to rely on double negatives and start to practice using them in context, even though it might feel a little weird at first.
Yeah, that's true. Cool.
So I'm scrolling through some of the questions, and Dana asked a really good question I think other people would like to know the answer to. that's not about negation necessarily, but I think, David, I'd love to have you weigh in on this question. Because I think this is something that trips me up too, is order of adjectives and nouns. We say that in Spanish, most of the time the adjective comes after the noun, but I know there are a select few cases in which you would put the adjective before the noun, and the adjective nuevo, and its forms nueva, nuevos, nuevas, is one of those adjectives that can that kind of changes its meaning a little bit before a noun. So do you think you could help explain this topic a little bit?
Yeah, of course, David. So in Spanish, there are some adjectives. As you said, there are just few of them that we can use either before or after the noun. In this case, nuevo, nueva. But also the adjective viejo. So in those cases where we are talking about age, or if something is old or new, there is a flexibility in terms of placing that adjective either in front or before the noun. Spanish is a language where we tend to place the adjectives always after the noun. I guess you learn it at school this way, and this is true. This is okay, but sometimes, especially in literature, poetry, it is possible also to place the adjective before the noun because it sounds like more elaborated. So it sounds also like I don't know, ancient Spanish from the 12th century, something like that. That's one of the first explanations. So there are some remains from that from those times in history of Spanish. The second thing is that there are some adjectives where we have also the meaning changing depending on the position of the adjective. So in this case, when we are talking about mi nueva empresa, I'm not saying I'm not referring to a company that was recently built. I'm just saying this is the new company where I was just hired. So this is my new experience, my new company. Whereas if we say mi empresa nueva, that could mean something like I'm talking about a company that I recently founded. So in these cases, we tend to speak in a more in a way that sounds also very poetic, like very abstract, just to say this is mi nueva empresa. So it's one of those few examples where we see that nueva refers to something which is not a new place, like a recently built place, but rather a place where I'm just new. I'm the new one in this place. So maybe we can also go deeper into this topic in the next episode, in one of the next episodes, because it's also very interesting. This is it would be also very useful for you to know what adjectives we can place before or after the verb without changing the meaning, and what adjectives also changes the meaning depending on the position in the sentence. So this is a very interesting question as well.
David, one example that came to my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to say the difference between mi amigo viejo or mi viejo amigo. This is something that I've learned, and I confuse them all the time, but if I'm not mistaken, they have different meanings. So viejo means old, but if you say un amigo viejo, you kind of translate it more literally. So you're talking about my friend who is old, literally an old person. If you're saying mi viejo amigo, you're talking about a friend who is old to me. The friendship is old. So it's like an old friend of mine.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how old the person actually is, but it's just a little nuanced difference in meaning that when you place the adjective before the noun or after the noun, you kind of either take it a little less literally or a little more literally. Would that be a good example?
Yeah, that's a good example. And I think this is also the kind of things that I imagine when I'm trying to explain this difference. That was perfectly explained. It depends where we place that all. And if we are talking about an old person, then we just say mi amigo viejo, which sounds right to me. But if we are talking about a friendship that is being there for ages, then I can also say mi viejo amigo, which doesn't necessarily mean that my friend is, I don't know, 90 years old. So that's the difference. We can, as I said, this is an interesting topic that we can talk about in one of our next episodes. Dana says here, nueva empresa equals the job is new for me. Empresa nueva would a new company. Yes, basically yes. Nuevo, the adjective nuevo has this flexibility. We can place it before the noun or after the noun, and we can say both things depending on the position. Empresa nueva would be a new company. Yeah, I am the owner of a new company. Soy el propietario de una empresa nueva, and that would be right to me.
So we've ended up talking a lot about a topic that is not negation, which is great. I'm glad that that Dana asked the question, because it's one that just we didn't think to even mention when we wrote that example sentence. So thank you for paying attention and for giving us great ideas for topics for later episodes. Why don't we go ahead, David, and give some example sentences for our amazing viewers, our very wonderful, smart viewers, to try their hand at. And then we'll leave them with una pregunta de tarea, a homework question, like we always do. And if you all have any more questions about negation or anything else that comes up along the way, feel free to ask in the comments and we can try to address them too. Or if not, we can get to them at a later episode or follow up on Facebook after this. But let's go ahead and give you 2 example sentences that we can do together live.
Let's start with this one. ¿No tienes hambre? Aren't you hungry? ¿No tienes hambre? Está bien. Yo tengo hambre. So we are negating this sentence as well.
I would say don't overthink it. Go with your gut. Go with your instincts.
So just as a quick recap for everyone, we saw words like nada, which means nothing, nadie, which means no one, and nunca, never. And we saw the word tampoco, which means neither. So I saw a lot of right answers. I mean, basically, if you're asking, ¿no tienes hambre? Aren't you hungry? Está bien. Yo. Then maybe we can pick this one. No. So Donna says no. That would be right. I mean, the sentence is completely correct. If we say no tienes hambre, está bien. Yo no tengo hambre. But what I'm trying to say here is, oh, Davey, you aren't hungry. I'm hungry either. I'm not hungry either. So this is the meaning that we want to express here. So what word would you need here? And I would say Marilyn says tampoco. So in this case, if we say, aren't you hungry? Well, I'm not hungry either. Está bien. Yo tampoco tengo hambre. Yeah, and that would be also correct. So I would say both are correct, no and tampoco, but tampoco gives this meaning that we want to express.
I think that we might have confused. I think I got confused, David, and I apologize to everyone, because I was interpreting when we wrote this question, the question "no tienes hambre" was asked by one speaker, and then "está bien, yo tengo hambre" was the answer to that question. And in that case, that would make the most sense for me to have no in the blank. So one person asks "no tienes hambre," and the other person responds "yo no tengo hambre." But if you were to ask "no tienes hambre," and then you were also the one following up, and then you get a response of no, and then the person who says "está bien, yo tampoco tengo hambre" could be the same person asking the first question. So it's like you're not hungry, you don't have hunger. Oh, neither do I. So either is correct, and you all killed it with this question. Great work.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's great also to see that you got it. We can just place a no in front of the verb, and then we have it. Yo no tengo hambre. And pay attention also to the position of tampoco here. Since we place it here in front of the verb, we don't need a second no. So that's why we don't say yo no tampoco tengo hambre, but yo tampoco tengo hambre. But we could also use double negation here if we decide to place that tampoco after the verb. Yo no tengo hambre tampoco.
That's what Gail said. Good job. Yeah.
Exactly.
Good work.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next sentence.
I'm adding it here, David. So
Okay.
the sentence reads, no tengo para ofrecer. And here we have three options. So we would ask you to add A if you think it's nadie, B if it's nada, or C if it's nunca, the right answer. So what would you say? No tengo. I don't have to offer. So I think it's worth giving here a quick recap what each word means. So nadie means no one, nobody. Nada means nothing. And nunca refers to time, never. What's the right answer, David?
So I think my first instinct is B, nada. No tengo nada para ofrecer. I have nothing to offer, or literally, I don't have nothing to offer. But I think everyone who's saying A could also be right. If I ask you something like, ¿quién sería una buena opción para este proyecto? Who would be a good option for this project if I'm looking for help or something? And you say, no tengo nadie para ofrecer. I don't have anybody to offer up. I don't have anybody in mind. That could also be a very valid answer too.
So you could also say no tengo a nadie para recomendar in this case, because ofrecer is something that refers to things. I mean, in many cases, I have a piece of cake here to offer, but I have anything else. So I would say B, nada, is the right answer. If we are using nadie in that place, in double negation, that nadie usually comes together with a preposition a, as we saw also in the example before, which was no conozco a nadie. Yeah, I don't know anyone. So in this case, we have the right answer, as Willia says here, B. So that's correct to me. And if we say no tengo a nadie para ofrecer, that sounds also interesting. So you have a person to offer. So in this case, we can also say no tengo a nadie para recomendar. That could be a good sentence where we use double negation with nadie. So I think we are closing this episode with a sentence for you, which we will correct next week, next Tuesday, same time, same channel, which is yo nunca camino por esa calle. So here we are, we see the preposition por that we learned some weeks ago, and the idea is that we use double negation in this case, so that we have a sentence that ends with por esa calle, with a double negation. So here you have the sentence negated with nunca. So what would it look like if we used double negation? So I think this is all for today. I was very happy to see you here, to see that you keep this engagement up, that you are always committed and helping us with your questions. Let us know if you have any other question, or if this is not clear enough. Let us know if you need also more practice, and we will prepare something for you. And if you have also any other question or matter that is bothering you when learning Spanish, let us know. Share those questions with us, and we will try to help you.
Yeah, very well said, David. I just want to thank everyone who keeps coming back week after week. It's so amazing to see the same faces and names. I feel like I'm getting to know everyone. And then the new joiners, I know there are a couple this week. If you are worried that you've missed out or that you've gotten behind, do not worry at all. You can go back and watch earlier videos on our Facebook page. So I think this is our 8th episode. So we have 7 before. It might be one more than that, but I can't remember. Either way, our videos are very easy to find. Reach out if you need help, but also feel free just to tune in without catching up. We'll try to make each lesson as straightforward as possible without the need to rely on too much from before. But we also think that it's great that we've had so many people here learning with us as we go and kind of building up the foundations in Spanish week after week. So with that, I'll say reach out to us on social media if you have any questions or just want to engage with Babbel. We are found at Babbel USA on Twitter and Instagram, and we're here on Facebook. You know where to find us. And then we also have our space on Quora, which is a great place just to engage with other language learners about Spanish or any other language, which I promote every week because it's awesome and I love it. Our space is called Everything Language, and you'll see my face around there too. And then we also have Babbel Magazine, which is our digital content hub for articles about language learning, Spanish. We have so much about Spanish as well. And I feel like that's such a fantastic resource if you just want to do some reading on your own. Otherwise, reach out to us. We love to hear from you. And we'll be back next week at 1 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday, the same time. We have a lot of great ideas for what we can present next week based on the great questions you've asked today and weeks before. So just stay tuned, keep studying, keep asking great questions, and we will see you a week from today.
Yeah. See you, David. See you, everyone. Nos vemos
Bye, David.
el próximo martes. Hasta pronto.